301 Cedar Springs was the scene of a burglary, but the events that followed caused this to be no ordinary burglary. It resulted in the death of one young boy and a murder charge filed against a Dallas policeman.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Today this is a rough story. It's a rough story. I've been doing a lot of research on it. I was actually told this story in sorts by a friend, and they didn't really know all the details, but they gave me pretty much the main point of the story, and that's all I needed. That drew me in, and I had to dig deeper. And as I dug deeper, I found a story that's full of tragedy, just full of despicable acts and people making stupid decisions and just doing bad things without thinking. And the fact that this story has law enforcement involved as the person that is doing the negative in this story, it just reigns true, and it's not much different than what we have going on today. But to start the story, where I stand right now, right behind me, that street right there where that vehicle just drove by, that is Cedar Springs Street in Dallas. And that's where our story starts. Because right to my right, in 1973, there was a Fina gas station. Now that Fina gas station is where our story starts. So let's go. So where I'm at right now, I'm on a side street, and it runs directly into Cedar Springs. Cedar Springs is where the gas station once stood. Now this gas station stood right here to my left. Now, as you can clearly see, there's no longer a gas station here. In fact, there's tons of construction. They've dug out a very large portion into the ground. So I'm not sure what's going to be here, but I'm sure it's a couple years out, and it looks like it's going to be something new. And there's always something new coming up. And that's why I say over the years, things change so much and things happen so rapidly that to lose certain locations is not uncommon. But in this case, we lost that, but that's not the point of the story. The point of the story is not the gas station where this all started. The point is what happened and why it shouldn't have happened. But it was at this Fina gas station that was once here. It was around 2:10 a.m. in the morning when an officer, Daryl Kane and Roy Arnold, showed up because they got a call. A silent alarm had went off. The gas station had been broken into, and when they got there, they arrived, and there was a small cigarette machine, vending machine at the time, because those were not uncommon in the 70s. And when they got there, the machine had been broken into, and when they investigated, it was $8 missing from the machine. $8. Now think about that as we go further into the story and what happens. There's $8 missing out of that vending machine. $8.
Texas was Mexico before it was ever Texas. There are 3 million Mexican Americans in Texas today.
All right, guys and gals, let's get to it. The reason we're doing this. So we started off, we showed you where a Fina gas station once stood in 1973. Clearly it's no longer there. So that brings us to the second spot I want to show you. And again, like the first spot, a lot has changed. It's not the same as it was in 1973, but this gives us a chance to tell you why we're here today. The reason we're here is Santos Rodriguez. Now, Santos was a 12-year-old boy living in the Dallas area. This part of Dallas used to be once considered Little Mexico. Reason being, segregation was big back in the 70s, especially for the Latino communities. So they were segregated to a certain part of Dallas, which was this part that I'm standing now. Again, we've came a long way. The cities came a long way. It's not the same anymore. But the thing that makes this story very intriguing and very sad is Santos 12, his brother David 13. Now back to the gas station. When that silent alarm went off back in 1973, those two officers, they showed up and they investigated and they determined that they were going to find out who did it. So now let's get into a little part of the story that kind of baffles me. That would be the two officers. They left the gas station, and somehow, some way, and I couldn't find a really good reason why, but as all the stories go, all the reports go, they assumed it was David and Santos that broke into this gas station. So they commenced to going to their house at 2:30 in the morning, knocking on the door, and taking the boys out, handcuffing them, putting them in their squad car, and driving back to a lot behind the gas station, and they commenced to interrogate them. So as they interrogated the boys, which were 12 and 13 years old, handcuffed in the back of a squad car, probably scared to death, in this vacant lot behind the gas station, Cain pulled out his .357 Magnum revolver, and again, as reports go, he emptied the bullets out. Or so we thought. He commenced to pointing this gun at these boys' heads, telling them, "You need to talk. I know you did it. I know you robbed the store. Confess, confess." As he pointed at each boy, he would be pulling the trigger, playing a little game of Russian roulette, trying to scare them into a confession. Well, it was Santos' turn to have the gun pointed at him. Officer Cain pointed that gun at him and commenced to saying, "Confess, I know you did it. Tell the truth." And he pulled the trigger. Well, this time wasn't like the time before. This time a bullet came through the chamber, hit Santos in the head, killing him. 12-year-old Santos Rodriguez, handcuffed in the back of a cop car with officers we entrust with our safety, getting shot and killed in cold blood. Insane. So this right here behind me is Pikes Park, not far from where they took Santos out of his house and not far from where the Fina gas station was. So everything was in a close radius of each other. This whole incident that happened on that night, July 24th at 2:10 in the morning, at least when it started. It's crazy. So out here in the park, they've named a center after Santos. They also have a memorial statue that they dedicated to Santos. So all this is, as the story goes, he loved to come here, play soccer with his friends and his brother, and just be a kid. And that was all taken from him. But right out here, at Pikes Park, somewhere out here, he was playing soccer as a young kid. Probably felt like he had the whole world ahead of him, not knowing that it'd be cut short by a law enforcement officer meant to serve and protect, being an idiot and just not thinking.
Here, and we state and we affirm that what happened in the hours of the darkness on that Tuesday morning, on the 24th of July, was wrong. And
so, another sad part is, right after Santos was shot in the back of that squad car, police showed up at Santos and David's grandfather's house on Pearl Street, and sadly, the way he found out what happened to his grandson was they asked him to come out and come down to the morgue to identify a body. And right away, Cain was suspended from the police force by Dallas Police Chief at the time, Frank Dyson, who filed charges of murder with malice against Cain the same morning of the shooting. So literally hours later, a bond of $5,000 was set by the municipal court judge. And man, you know, at that time that was quite a bit of money, but still, for murder, I don't think that was a high enough bond. But anyway, Chief Dyson expressed his disappointment at the bond price, and Judge Goodwin at the time later refused to comment on her bond setting when pressed by the Mexican American community, which not long after that, they marched, they protested downtown Dallas. Now, it got a little out of hand if you ask a lot of the people that were involved. They said they weren't there to hurt or damage anything. Ultimately, there were some bystanders who took it a little too far. They were catching police motorcycles on fire. They were catching cop cars on fire. They were fighting, hurting people, breaking in to buildings, businesses, stealing stuff. And ultimately, after it was all said and done, it was meant to be a peaceful march because a 12-year-old boy had lost his life, and it was absolutely inexcusable. Should have never happened. 12-year-old kid should be getting ready to go to high school within the coming years, dating, having friends, getting ready to learn how to drive, and ultimately getting ready to grow up and be an adult in this world, full of opportunity. Whatever we want is out there. But unfortunately, it wasn't meant to be for Santos. And I can really only imagine his brother David had to live with seeing that. And his brother's still alive today, as well as his mother, and his memory lives on. So we're gonna go see Santos's grave, and I got a little gift for him, and there's a little story behind it. So let's go check it out. So I'm here at Oakland Cemetery in Dallas, Texas, and we're walking up to visit the grave of Santos Rodriguez. Obviously, the 12-year-old boy that was heavily interrogated by an officer who was 30 years old for a robbery he didn't commit, ultimately shot in the head while handcuffed in the back of a cop car. I think that's despicable what happened with this kid. Absolutely despicable. So it was actually in Dallas, Texas. His funeral was held on Thursday, July 26th at 2 p.m. at First Mexican Baptist Church. There was an airplane going over. And from what I've read, it was a beautiful service. And family, friends, and all the people that absolutely were disgusted by this tragedy came down and paid their respects. And he was eventually buried in the cemetery that we're at now. So I'm going to show you his grave. And I got a present for him. Now, this present tells me a few things. We all have a journey that's meant to start and end at some point. Now, the person that told me about this story, I appreciate that because I'm glad I dug into it. I'm glad I was able to tell it to an extent. At the same time, my last video was on a cemetery in Arlington, Texas. It was a story of the Baraka House, which if you go watch that video right now, you'll find out what I'm talking about. But a funny little thing happened after I finished that video. There was a small soccer field in that park. And on that small soccer field, I found a soccer ball somebody had left. They left it there. And I waited a minute, but I eventually took it because clearly there was nobody around. My wife asked me why I was stealing the ball, but I didn't look at it that way. I just figured it was in a little bit of rough shape, so they probably left it. And then as I was researching the Santos Rodriguez story, I kept hearing about how much he loved soccer. So I had that ball in my truck since that day. And now that we're doing the Santos Rodriguez story, and we're here at his grave, I'm going to leave this for him. Now, they say Santos could kick a ball almost all the way down the field of a soccer field at very high speeds. He loved soccer. So I honestly feel great that I found this ball, and into this story I get to leave it for Santos. So here we are. Santos Rodriguez, born November 7th, 1960, taken from this world July 24th, 1973. Nice little headstone. I've seen in other photos different flowers, so clearly people are still coming out here leaving flowers. Maybe his mother, maybe his brother. But I think more people should look into this story. So as we close this today, I want to make one thing clear. If we all lose hope and faith and trust in the individuals around us, then we'll be a lot worse off than we are now. I believe there are individuals, and we are let me rephrase that. We are all our own individual person with our own individual thoughts, mindset, and that's just the way it has been, will be, and is going to always be. There's police officers, firefighters, doctors out there that are meant to either protect us, help us, and more times than not, that's exactly what they do. But there are those cases where things that happen to Santos happen to other people. And it clearly goes on today. It's something that hasn't ended. Police don't have no more of a right than you and I to take somebody's life for no reason. Now, there is such thing as immediate danger and your life being threatened. I do believe in that, because I do believe if I felt threatened or if I felt my family was in immediate danger, I would react. Absolutely, I would. But it would have to be a situation and a circumstance where I absolutely deemed it necessary. And I think that's just how it should be. But not everybody thinks that way. I think what Officer King did that night was very, very inappropriate, very stupid, and very careless. You're an officer of the law. You do not point a gun at a child's head. You damn sure don't pull the trigger, whether you think there was bullets in there or not. And obviously he's went down as saying, he's since passed, but he went down as saying that numerous times that he thought he took all the bullets out. I could care less what he said. Should have never happened. But as we close it out, thank you all for coming on this journey. And again, send your prayers out to the Rodriguez family. What they went through and what thousands and thousands of other people in this world have went through, whether it's here or in other countries, when children are taken from their homes, when parents are killed in front of their children. Just so many despicable things happen around this world because there's a lot of bad people. And Elton John tried to do it. John Lennon tries to do it. Martin Luther King tried to do it. There's a lot of people out there that tried to do it. Bring peace and love and preach it, because the more we all get along and the more we love each other, the better off we'll be. They've all tried and failed in the sense that I say they did bring notice and awareness, and they did unite people to an extent, but it eventually wore off. Doesn't mean that eventually they won't be part of the history of people that just fought for those rights and that love. But in the end, we just got to keep trying to be good people. Again, pray for Santos, the Rodriguez family, and thank you for coming along on this one. Hey, if you got a story you want to tell, tell it. You got a place you want to go, go. People you want to meet, go meet them. But tell the story through your eyes, because we'd all love to hear it. And thanks for hearing mine. Again, American Dream Channel. Dream big, everybody.
8 years ago this week, a 12-year-old boy died at the hands of a Texas police officer who tried to get that boy to confess to a petty crime.